Amazing. So hello guys, hope you're all well and having a great week. Tonight, Middlesex University Product Design Engineering and Design Engineering are really excited to host our second talk in our 2021-2022 guest lecture series. So this series runs weekly throughout the academic year on Thursday evenings, and we bring together a vibrant mix of speakers across the design and engineering sectors. A mix of leading practitioners, opinion leaders, radical thinkers, and emerging talents to inspire and support the professional development of all of our participants, students, and staff. Tonight, we're really excited to host Goda, Gorodnicevaite, presently a junior graphic designer at Koto in London. So Goda is a curious artist and designer. She's born and raised in Lithuania, and she's situated in Lithuania at the moment for the talk as well. She's driven by a dynamic rhythm. Throughout her life, Goda's explored different cultural disciplines and mediums, playing different instruments, dancing, singing, admiring architecture through photography as well. She's crafting from origami to crochet toys and playing with moving images. And Goda's details and biography were sent to your emails ahead of the talk, including links to her website, links to the social media handles as well. So definitely feel free to browse and connect. Recently graduating from the University of Hertfordshire and very familiar with the task of preparing a portfolio as well, going through the process of applications and interviews, Goda penned a superb article in the MDX-PD 2021 magazine as well, contributing to the special feature on design portfolios, where we had a comprehensive collection of insights and advices across the industry, pages 75 to 105. And Goda's article, A Quick Guide to Your Graduate Portfolio, is featured on pages 101 and 102. So definitely download the publication and have a read. As usual, feel free to gather your thoughts, your questions, your comments in the chat throughout the talk. We'll have Q&A at the end as well. And as usual, there's the option to go live and interact after the talk as well. And without any further ado, guys, Goda Gorodnicevaite with a talk titled The Not So Secret Recipe to Getting into the Graphic Design Industry. Goda, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. Oh, you smashed my surname. It's so complicated and hard to read, but you did it right. Okay, let me just share the screen. All set. Is it full screen? Just Perfect. Give me a little nod. Okay. So hello guys. It is kind of weird not to see you. Let me see. Okay. Okay, now I can see. So thank you for such a lovely introduction. Today I will take you through the not so secret recipe to getting into the graphic design industry. Just because I am a graphic designer, but I'm completely aware of my public today and all the viewers coming into from all the different disciplines. And I try to adapt all of this information for everyone. So hopefully everyone can take something out of today. So hello. Just to give a little introduction about myself, something a little bit further. So I did graduate last year from University of Hertfordshire from the graphic design course. It was a lovely experience. And if I was to suggest it to someone else, I definitely would. And I am currently working at Studio Koto in London. I am a junior designer, and I am working in the field of branding, because I'm sure you're aware there's so many different fields, even in graphic design. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. But a first little disclaimer, since I am working in branding and my portfolio was tailored to that industry, some of the information might not really apply to you, but hopefully it's going to be quite broad and general, and you can just take something out of it. And, you know, without further ado, let me tell you everything. Not really everything, guys. As I mentioned in my article, I said, take everything with a little grain of salt, and, you know, with like most things in life. So just enjoy the presentation, take what's useful for you, and let's just crack on. A little backstory again on how I got into this industry, into the graphic design industry. It was actually through my university. Studio Koto, actually my lecturers approached Studio Koto and asked whether we could do a live project with them. And we got a live brief set by Koto. And by the end of the year, Koto asked to send our portfolios And that is how I got the job. They liked my portfolio. They invited me to come and do a little internship, and then I got offered a full-time position. But the main thing was the portfolio. And I did write some things about the portfolio in the magazine, and I will try not to repeat myself, because just to save your time, I will try to give some other tips and examples of how you can actually enhance your storytelling and how it might be important for you. So thank you if you read the article. If not, hopefully all of this further information is going to be useful. A little recap. What I said there was, first, getting all of your assets ready when you graduate. So that's either a PDF or portfolio or a website. That's your CVs, all the motivational letters, and maybe some social media accounts if that's useful for your subjects. Another important thing is just knowing the area of design that you want to work in. And the thing is that you actually need to tailor your work and how you present your work and what your work is, because as I mentioned in the article, you can't actually send a packaging design orientated portfolio to a digital studio, because it's just not the work they do. So it's really important to know what you want to do. And the last bit was just some technical kind of bits and bobs that will help you kind of refine it even further. But today I will kind of focus more on the third bit, and will give you hopefully more examples and little guidelines on how to work into that portfolio. A little quick note before I start, probably something really important, and I feel like each student feel like this is really important, especially for us graphic designers, because that's what we do branding. But at the end of the year, you also need to consider your personal branding, because that's how you present yourself in the industry. But what I've gathered from all of my mentors and lecturers and other people and designers from the industry, the best tip that I could give you is actually not going too hard on your personal branding. And what I mean by that is just not going with a very crazy design. And I understand that it's hard, because you need to stand out in this saturated industry, and it is hard, and you want to kind of, I understand that we want to express ourselves, and personal branding is one of the ways you do that. But I just suggest you go a little bit more minimal. And I understand if you maybe want to present that you're a very interesting person, maybe very funny, but you can definitely show that during the interview, and your work and your portfolio is going to be the thing that will get you to that interview. So I would rather suggest, maybe spending less time focusing on creating the logo that represents yourself, and spending so much time investing into other bits and pieces of your personal branding, and maybe even kind of dedicating that time to perfecting your portfolio, because this is going to be the thing that will give you the job. So this is my little tip. It's not really a controversial opinion, because that's what designers from the industry tell us. But I personally felt like I had to create a very interesting and original and authentic logo for myself to kind of present my work, but that was actually not the case. And you'll see when I will show you my portfolio, it was actually quite minimal, and some would almost consider it being quite soulless, because it was just black and white. But just a little tip on this. And the main course, the portfolio, it is really interesting, because in this creative industry, this is the thing that gets us the job. And for me personally, it was such a headache I don't know if it was for what reason it was so hard to actually build it and just start building it. It seemed like such a huge task to do. And on one hand, when you think about it, it's only some bits of information about the project and some images pasted into a little slideshow presentation, right? But on the other hand, I feel like there is an opportunity to tell a story and tell a story about your ideas, because it doesn't matter if you create graphic design, if you create product design, we are creatives and we create something, and all of that something starts from an idea. And knowing how to kind of sell it maybe it's not the right word, because we're not really in marketing, right? But knowing how to present it and knowing how to present it in an interesting and engaging way is going to be so crucial and so important. And I could assure you that good storytelling will take you really far. And it is a really good skill to have, just knowing how to speak about your own ideas. And the way I structured this presentation to make it more digestible for you guys was just separating these the information into two bits. So I will quickly look at the overall structure of your portfolio, and then I will look and speak a little bit about the individual case studies. And if someone would ask me what a case study was, it is basically just a presentation of one project with all of the kind of written annotations and all of the images, all of the sketches that you have, basically just a presentation of your project that has an official name, which is a case study. Yeah, let's go. We got it. Okay. So first of all, the overall structure of your folio. This is a little snippet of my portfolio that landed me a job at Koto. I guess the biggest takeaways from here are quite visible. You could from the beginning tell that I was going quite hard with all of the full bleed images and kind of being brave and confident, something that I will talk about later on. Being brave about your design and not being scared of showing maybe only one poster, only one product, only one side of the product, but crafting it. And this example here was I did a little photo shoot of the poster, and that's why I had the confidence to actually just put one poster, one image of a poster on a one page. And it really helps to kind of look professional in a way. And I guess the other thing about the overall structure of your folio, it doesn't really matter if it's like a PDF or a presentation or even a website. I'm aware you guys probably use different formats for presenting your work, but I feel like having a little set structure, like creating the way you package your work, will help you out in a sense of personal branding, and I will explain what I mean. Like here you can see the structure of my portfolio was having some information, providing some context on the first page of the project, and then kind of rolling out the project on separate pages. And then again, you come to another project and then you have the same kind of page. From far away, they look the same, but you can tell that the text is kind of different because the explanations were different for each project. But kind of when you finish going through one project, you come back to another case study and you understand that this is from the same portfolio. And also it's very barely visible because this export of the whole grid is quite poor, sorry guys. But you could see in some instances here, for example, there are some little annotations, just like I have in this presentations in the corner. And this allowed me to kind of add some little information if I needed to explain something, because I was going so boldly with all of my images, hoping they can speak for themselves. But sometimes you need just a little bit of explanations. And I do understand that you can kind of approach the text bits and where you put all of the text quite differently. But this is just what worked for me. And I allowed my work to kind of speak for itself. And luckily it worked, you know. But yeah, I would say these are the main takeaways. And I didn't really even need any personal branding for that. I just had a clear structure of how I present my work and some little annotations, and I allowed my work to shine through. And you can actually tell my projects are quite different, and that's a good thing. And with my personal branding, I didn't overshadow all of those projects. I just allowed them to kind of shine through with all of what they have. And jumping onto probably one of the biggest tips I could give you guys is just, and how I actually approached creating my portfolio, is just looking at other people that do it very good and very well. And for me, it was just looking at the big branding agencies and looking how they build their case studies. And honestly, if you spend some time just analyzing how they present the work, kind of looking at different touch points, looking maybe at how they rendered their products, maybe how they place them, how all of the photography is created, kind of looking into there and analyzing it helped me so much, because I applied all of those rules to my case studies. And that was probably one of the reasons why I was so lucky into landing a job that quickly. And hopefully I will help you out by kind of picking out those little rules that might help you with my further information. But just honestly, depending on your discipline, maybe going into Behance or any other kind of blogs where you can see other people's work and just looking how they do it, it's easy to understand where the product, the design is professional, and you can actually see these kind of full bleed images applied here as well. The designer was confident into his or her work and just put the trace so boldly in there, and it looks professional. So something to keep in mind. And now just jumping on to the individual case studies bit. I think it's going to be quite long. I know it's going to be quite long, but hopefully I can jump through it quite quickly. But please, if you have any questions, just write them down. Don't forget about them and ask them at the end of the presentation. So one of the first things, and actually to explain how I'm going to present it, this bit, I will go through one of my projects, one case study, and I dissected some of the rules that I applied to the way I presented my work. And then I will give one example from a good branding studio, which will be my current studio, which is Studio Koto. And I will take their projects and I will show you how they apply these rules. And then I will show another example from industrial design and how the same rules could be applied there. And you can see how even in different disciplines, knowing where to look and knowing how to tell the story is used in the same manner. And the first step, not really the first step, but first thing about storytelling is giving some context to your project, to your work. And the way I approached this, as I mentioned before, was just having my first page with some information, having the name of the project on the left, for example. And the way I dissected all of the information was providing the brief, the task, then kind of writing down what my solution was, and then how kind of the idea shines through the design. And that just helps the designers and the employees see how you think, see what kind of references you made, what were your kind of inspirations, and just generally what the idea is about. And it is quite hard to speak about your project and speak about your idea. And especially for me, since English is not really my mother tongue, but spending some time in this stage is really important, because all of the employees, they don't really have a lot of time to read through everything. So I felt like having lots of text on each page was just not a solution. And I try to kind of concise the explanations as much as I can. So that would be one of suggestions for me. And the way Koto does it, for example, they actually approach it quite differently. They have some information at the top of the project, but then they add some extra information somewhere in the middle. But that is needed because they want to explain some of their design decisions. But always at the top, they will explain the main core, the big idea of the whole visual identity. And maybe, yeah, and maybe how this could be applied to industrial design. Again, also another huge tip: never start with text, right? Always have a hero image at the front. And luckily, a different approach worked for my portfolio. But for example, if you're creating a case study in Behance, you will always need a cover image and just something to kind of surprise the viewer. But it works the same here. As you can see, you have some little explanation of what Kodak memory is, for example. And this project as well had some additional information somewhere in the middle, which is fine. But then I would suggest having as less information as possible at the beginning, so you can kind of quickly run through all of those little annotations. Another step is just being brave and confident and smart. And what I mean by that is, for example, here I presented some packaging, right? And I went quite boldly with it. And at first glance, you could say it's just packaging. Maybe it's not too interesting, but how I think I was smart with this was just allowing the actual strap line of the brand to shine through here. And it was used on the packaging. And instead of using maybe one flat mock-up of the box like this one, I found a mock-up that shows kind of different sides of the box. And this allowed me to kind of tell the story even further. And this is the first image you get when you enter to this project. And the way I approached it was kind of hopefully striking the viewer with the professional visuals that I have, and kind of already starting to tell the story about the brand I created. And you get the name of the brand, and you get the strap line that kind of explains what the brand is all about in one little sentence. And some different ways how you can do that. Graphic design studios usually create these brand worlds where you have a little image that kind of shows what art direction would suit your brand. And then maybe, since they work with very talented copywriters and strategists, they allow the copy to shine through. And at first glance, you would think, oh, it's only just an image with some type, right? But they actually are starting to tell the story about this brand, which is meetable. I put all of the links in here. If I will be able to share the presentation, I will. But these links are quite short, so if you need to check them, you can. And just to jump quickly on an example from the industrial design side, here, for example, on the same project for Kodak, the person went quite confidently with just a full bleed on shot of the product. But this was actually a GIF, and it was moving, and it was telling the story of how the product works. So kind of pushing each page, pushing each element even further being brave and confident about your design decisions, about what you create, but also trying to inject some more thinking and more storytelling into everything you do, because you can't really create a case study with like 30 pages. The optimal number is usually, well, at least for graphic design, is usually between 6, 7 to maximum 11 pages. So, and most of the times, you know, you have a lot to show, but you need to find smart ways to kind of include and concise all of your design decisions and kind of tell what your idea is all about. Another thing, all about that good quality render, in my case, mockups. I spent some time, and honestly, I used to spend a lot of time searching for good mockups, and it's really hard as a student because good mockups are usually, you know, they cost money, and being a student on low budget, it's kind of hard. But there's quite a lot of stores where you can actually get some free mockups, and if you actually spend some time, you could find good mockups that aren't overused by other students. But probably in the case of product designers, it's more about creating good renders, because that's how you present your work. And this is a thing that I can't really speak much about because I've never created a 3D model, and I understand how hard it is and how complicated the software is. But if you can invest more time into kind of perfecting your renders, this will pay off. And some example from Koto again, how they presented their packaging. And since I've spent a lot of time searching for mockups, I know what the OG mockups are and what mockups all of the students use. And this mockup is definitely not something I've seen before. And I assume that Koto probably created a 3D render for this project, which is also a very smart idea. And another example from the industrial design side, I understand how complicated this is, but if you have the chance, if you have the opportunities, if you can learn, because I'm sure there's plenty of tutorials online, I imagine that presenting your work, your product that you created in such manner would elevate the way your ideas are perceived and the way your work is perceived overall. So it's a hard thing to master, but I think it's worth the time, you know, and effort. The fourth thing, show all of those little details. And what I mean by that is being confident again, and just maybe sometimes zooming in into your product. And you know, you will have to have a good quality render for that, but maybe you can render something out where you actually zoom into the product closer. Maybe there's an intricate and interesting button, or maybe there's some iconography happening, or maybe there's some, you know, a line of text that actually explains how the product works and is a really important part of the user experience. Just zoom into that, and again, be brave and confident. Have like a full blade image, just whack it on one page and just wing it. And example from Koto again, from the beans, and how they kind of zoomed into the same render that they had, kind of showing the intricacy of design and how they kind of created this system of where they explain the type of roast, and kind of they show that you can have little notes, and you could actually see that each packaging is different, and that is telling another story, and that is telling a story about individuality and all the different kinds of beans that this brand, you know, have. So all of these little things add up into telling this huge story about your idea initially. And the Kodak example here again, it's how they kind of zoomed in there, showing the very slick and minimal design, which looks very professional, and kind of also you can see that this says open. If I'm not too blind, I think it says open, but you can actually understand more how the product works instead of having the product in a beautiful kind of shop, but quite kind of far away. So this could be quite useful. And just a little side note, it's quite a lot of rules, and you don't, necessarily have to use and apply all of them onto the same project. But I feel like if you even apply some of them, it could elevate your work a lot. And not really your work, but maybe how you present your work. Because sometimes the actual idea and your product and design can be very interesting and very authentic, but if your presentation is quite poor, it's not really going to help. And I know you understand that. So the fifth point is efficiency on the technicalities. And what I mean by that, in this instance, I wanted to show some moments of the website that I've created. And instead of maybe showing a mock-up of just one website page, I decided to create this little grid and layout that shows the user experience of how you land on a page and where you're taken to participate in this kind of campaign. And I actually got this idea from how the big branding studios present the guidelines. The guidelines is basically a brand book of rules that you need to apply, rules to kind of follow if you want to remain consistent with your visual identity, rules for the future designers that will design for the brand. And I thought maybe that's an interesting way of how I can kind of just present my website and make it more engaging instead of having multiple pages of just one website moment each. And for example, how maybe this could be applied to product design. Like here, I'm not sure if they actually created a magazine or they were kind of invited there, but it's an interesting way again to kind of put more information into one project. And this tells a story that this was probably released and got quite famous, I guess, and then someone wrote about the product. And just kind of, instead of showing separate moments, you can actually put it into something else, which is an interesting approach, quite complicated, but it just helps to digest the information more easily. Another tip would be showing one thing with another. This is quite vague, and hopefully this can be applied to other disciplines. But in this example, my project was all about collecting the stories of menopause. And from the first glance, you understand that I'm showing a moment of website, right? But actually, I was telling a story and showing how all of those collected stories can be presented in that website. So alongside the design that I created, I was actually showing how the core idea of this brand, which was collecting menopause stories, manifests in the product, which is the website. And in a similar manner, all of the design studios present their work. Like here, for example, Koto's work for Venmo. Instead of maybe, showing a little mock-up of a moment of the app, they actually introduce some illustrations alongside, and you understand that this is how the app will look like, but you also at the same time get the messaging about the brand. You get the tone of the brand. Throw your cards up, which is quite confident and fun and approachable. And it's all of those little things, all of those little ideas put into one page. And it's a huge source of information for the viewer. And maybe how in a similar manner you can approach the storytelling. For example, in the same Kodak project, the person wanted to introduce and explain how the product works, and they created this little story, this little user experience, and they presented it in a quite minimal manner, and it feels easily digestible because you understand how you need to kind of read it. It has some little annotations here and there, and it's just a smart way to kind of explain something about the product instead of having a blob of text, you know. The seventh little rule is enhancing the storytelling even further. And by that, I mean using some applications in graphic design instance. Graphic designers really like showing some social media posts. And of course, it is a way to show how your creative visual identity lives in the world, lives in social media, and how your design could be, you know, adapted for Twitter posts, LinkedIn posts, Instagram posts. But at the same time, when studios build their case studies, they use these moments to further tell the story about the brand. And in this example here, I have 2 Instagram stories and an Instagram post, but actually the information that I put here is quite important because I am explaining how all of those collected menopause stories will be presented, for example, each Wednesday, and you will get little quotes from the stories, and you will kind of be reminded about all of the intricacies of menopause, and at the same time how this and the story could be further tell through Instagram posts. So again, it's not only showing the design, but it's further explaining the idea and all of the little ideas that I had for this brand letter by letter. And in the same manner, again, Koto tells some more stories about Venmo, even here with a little illustration that speaks all about community and being together and helping out. You know, sometimes you don't really need words to explain something, but it still shows what the brand is all about. And in a similar manner, again, Kodak is telling a little story, and you don't really need any annotations here. And the person just allows the work to speak for itself, and you understand that there is an app for the creative product, and that is how you use it. And you had the little user experience explained before, so everything is quite clear, and it looks professional because it is clean and clear, and it has enough negative and clean space for the design to breathe. And the last little bit is all about thinking bigger. So it's thinking how you can push your creative product and maybe show where you can apply it. In my case, it was using this created brand, using all of those collected stories of menopause, and creating and curating an exhibition for all of the participants and all of the people in London that want to kind of familiarize themselves with this phenomena that happens to all the women in the world. And in a similar manner, how Koto they did a rebrand for Discord, and how they showed how their brand could live somewhere else in the physical world. For example, having the logo in the office. And in a very similar manner, how this kind of presentation of a product is shown alongside a human. And it's you know, it's self-explanatory, and you can see where the product is living in our world, how people use it. And instead of maybe having all of the renders on a very wide and kind of blank background, also push it. Think of where your item is going to be used. think of what people will do with it. Think of how people will react with the product, and make sure the people are smiling. Make sure they kind of show that the product is helping them with something, that it's causing them happiness. And it can just further tell the story, because we all are problem solvers, and you solve the problem, then just show how your solution can help someone. Clearly kind of present it to other people. And you know, if you really work hard on it, it will definitely work. And a little recap and roundup of all of the tips, giving some context to your projects at the front or somewhere in the middle, being brave, confident, and smart about your decisions. Investing some time into some good quality renders or mock-ups or whatever you guys use, showing all of those details, and being brave about them, you know, kind of enhancing your storytelling through them, being quite efficient on some of the technical bits where you have some more information you need to show and explain, but finding an interesting way to kind of present it. Showing one thing with another. Again, instead of showing design, find a way to actually tell more with it. And again, you know, further enhancing the storytelling, and then thinking bigger, and always thinking bigger. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for today. I hope it was useful. I see some action happening in the chat section. And now I will take your questions.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Goda. It was a brilliant talk on your journey, like from graduating all the way to the industry, insights and tips and advices on like your personal branding, keeping it minimal, portfolios, storytelling as well, and a case study via one of your projects, so showcasing the application of skills. And yeah, so definitely have a read of Goda's article, A Quick Guide to Your Graduate Portfolio. It's featured on pages 101 and 102 of the MDXPD 2021 magazine. And whilst Goda's expertise and background is in graphics, she drew a lot of parallels and also touched on important elements of like graphic and visual communication that can be embedded with industrial design, product design engineering portfolios as well. And on that note, also read the other articles on the same subject, some more specific to industrial design, product design, design engineering, and subjects such as storytelling. There's 31 pages of articles and advices and insights from across the industry on pages 75 to 105. So definitely download and read the MDXPD 2021 magazine. And guys, feel free to gather your thoughts, your questions, comments, sentiments in the chat. And as usual, if you want to go live and interact with questions as well, feel free to do that. One of the first questions, let's get that up here, from Carlos Ariel. He's asking, where can we see and find your portfolio, Goda?
So it will be on this link on the bottom on the right. So this is like a website version of it. I could share my PDF if it's useful, but everything is going to be on the website. So maybe that's the fastest way to find it.
Amazing. And if you download that magazine and that also read Goda's article, there's a link to her website there as well. Yeah. Right. And Kremtim Maliki, he's asking, doesn't a portfolio have to be smaller than what we're shown, as industries sometimes do not have the time to look at everything?
It is very true. It is very true. I was going quite risky with the amount of projects I'm showing and the amount of maybe design and pages I had. It was, compared to my peers, my portfolio was quite extensive. But just because I worked harder on the storytelling part, the designers were not angry about it, because having more pages allowed me to tell the story about the idea more fluently, if you know what I mean. So I would say finding the middle. It depends on the subject again. If the idea is quite technical and maybe there's not a lot of explanations going on, then of course try to keep it as small as possible. But it is quite different for each subject, I guess.
Amazing. And Adam Mahedin, he's asking, is it possible to get a copy of your presentation?
It is, yeah. I'm gonna share it. I'm gonna share it to you, and you can just send it out.
Amazing. And Manu, maybe he's never touched on mockups previously, so he wants you to explain what a render or a mockup is.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So basically, let me just jump back to a nice example. A mockup is basically sometimes a realistic, sometimes a very flat scene. So I created the design for the website, right? And I put it into a computer mockup. So it's basically kind of like packaging, and you apply your design onto it. Because all of these, for example, sorry for jumping so quickly, the created scene, the little marble block, the pen, the papers, the envelope, that's a mock-up, and you can download a Photoshop file of it, and then there's many different layers that you go into, and you just paste your flat design, and it gets applied onto a physical object like these, for example. A render, I imagine if you create a product, you probably need to create a 3D model. And what I had in mind by render is just kind of rendering your 3D model in a somewhat scene that you created. So hopefully that's clearer.
Amazing. And Ramsey Hayder's asking, what softwares do you use, Goda?
I mostly work in Adobe Suite. It's Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, and InDesign. Most of the times I did a little bit of motion, so I used Adobe After Effects, and sometimes for all of the website thingies we use Figma, but most of the times it's just Adobe.
Awesome, brilliant. And Ramsey's asking another question as well. He's asking, do you have a website for portfolios or just a PDF, or a combination of both?
That's a good question. For graphic design, I always thought you need to have a website, and that's the first thing. But actually a PDF is more useful because that is what actually most of the studios ask for when they put an ad saying we are looking for a designer, send your PDF portfolio. And that was 8 times out of 10 when I was kind of doing more research on where to work. So for graphic design, yes, a PDF is vital. Then you can have a website because it's a nice way to kind of show your work. You can kind of link it into your social media accounts and just share it with your friends, and you know, it's a faster way of sharing, I guess. But for graphics, you do need a PDF, and I'm not really sure about other disciplines, so I don't really want to comment anything specific.
On that note, Goda, I must call another frequently asked question. In terms of PDF and printed portfolios, what's your perspective on that?
You know, I graduated during a pandemic, so a physical portfolio was not something I needed to prepare. Now when I think about it, if I had to go into an interview, I know that some other designers still bring in their printed designs, and it's a nice thing to show, especially if you created a design for a book or something. If you have a little prototype of your product as well, I guess it adds to, it's always nice, you know, to have something physical. But I mean, in graphic design industry, they do look through a digital portfolio first, and then only you go into an interview, and then only you can bring in something physical. But I feel like most of the times now, all of the interviews are online, so there's not much you can actually do.
Amazing. And Carlos is asking them, how do you recommend that they present the projects and future projects, and what's the best ways of showing a company their work?
If that's a question about a format, I feel like the biggest tip that I got, and I want to pass it to you guys, is just looking at how other people present the work, because it differs for each industry. And you can see that in industrial design, you tend to get more sketches that explain kind of how you created the concepts, the designs and everything. And it's an important bit of your process. But actually, if you look at it, you can see how the people present it, and then you only need to pick your tool that you're going to create your portfolio in. You can actually use Google Slides, which I'm not really sure if it's free. I think it's free, but it's an easy to use tool. You can just paste in your images. You can select some fonts, it's much easier than creating a portfolio in a Photoshop, I guess, or everywhere else. So I'm not sure if that answered your question. Just let me know if not.
That's a brilliant point that you touched on, Goda. In terms of industrial design, product design engineering, like sketching and the ideation and the design thinking is like a really valuable, skill, and that you want to kind of exemplify in the process as well. How much of that do you get in terms of branding? Like, for example, you might not necessarily, the company might not necessarily like the end product or the outcome, the final brand, the final logo, but they might like value the thinking and the kind of process of ideation that you've gone through. So how much of that do you get in the graphic industry?
This is very true. This is a very good point, because it's like the opinions are quite different. Some people suggest including some of the sketches and kind of early concepts of your project, because it just shows your thinking. But I feel like if you do that, just not going too crazy, maybe one page of kind of like the early concepts, but just because my case studies were kind of so branded, for me it was hard to include a sketch somewhere in there, because I was just already telling a story. And most of the branding agencies that I was looking at, they don't really include any sketches, which is also interesting. So that's the reason I didn't have any in my presentation. But if you see that some of the workplaces that you want to work for actually include some sketches, just look at how they present it, look at the amount of information they present, and maybe kind of apply the same method. Because I do agree it is valuable. And as you mentioned, sometimes the final result might not be so impressive, but the actual thinking in some stages of your process might be something that might land you a job. You never know with these things.
Yeah, definitely. And James Buhan's asking the question, and it relates back to the COVID period as well. So over the past year, have you noticed if COVID has affected the ways companies are designing their products or the way they consider branding and going through the process?
That's a very good question, actually. I feel like the way that we communicate with clients has definitely changed. I haven't really noticed maybe any clear differences how the actual businesses and brands think that the brand could live somewhere else. For example, if they focused more on the digital side of things, just because everything moved kind of to digital during the pandemic, I still feel like we're still designing with the same principles as pre-COVID, but maybe the way we work now is quite different. The internal work, the way we kind of communicate with clients, is most of the times now quite online. So it's a good question. I might need to think about it even more to further elaborate.
No, definitely. And I totally agree. And I guess that the other aspect of that is the kind of collaboration within teams and within the groups as well. So, you have platforms like Miro and other similar kind of things where you can work together, even things like Figma and these kind of tools. They offer collaboration, online and remotely as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Miro is amazing. We actually use it, and Figma as well. We use it to collaborate with clients. So that's a very good point. So I feel like from the internal work processes, that's where we probably felt the difference. Because I imagine pre-COVID, the design studios probably had many workshops with clients and not as many now, just because of all the contacts, that they are trying to avoid.
Definitely. And another question coming in from Tariq Imad is, what do you think a company values more? So like really great storytelling behind a product. So like how a design could have a story or narrative behind it, or a really compelling design with details and good considerations of detail.
Yeah. It is both, right? But every good design starts with a clever idea, and that's the beginning of the process. And the design is just the manifestation of this idea. So sometimes, you have an idea that's not so groundbreaking, but you could actually work on the design and really develop it, be very meticulous with it and deliver a very good quality work. But for me, from my personal experience, and that's something that my creative directors told me, was that from a junior, they are expecting good ideas because they understand that I still don't have all of the knowledge of the software, and I don't know all of the little tips and tricks of how to use it and how to manifest this idea. And that's why they are there for me. And I just need to have those good ideas at the beginning, and they will help me and teach me how to kind of create the good quality professional design. So I feel like maybe at this point of your career, being a graduate, like a junior designer, it's really focusing on the ideas first and kind of nailing that part, and then focusing on the craft side of things. Because of course, all of the design agencies, they value good thinking and good craft, but they still probably expect more of a good ideas from juniors, because we can't really know everything, right? We can't have all of the skills to deliver high class design because we're just starting. So it's all right.
Definitely. And Mohammed's asking, have you experienced any major drawbacks in terms of graphic design and presenting your own work? And if so, like, how do you overcome it?
Maybe not huge drawbacks, I guess. I feel like most of the people are struggle with public speaking, and just it's quite hard to speak about your own ideas and present your work and being quite confident about it. And I was definitely not as confident at level 4 when I just started uni. I was so shy. It was so hard for me to speak about my ideas. I thought they were quite poor, and I was putting a lot of pressure onto myself. But since I had to do it so many times, and just kind of repeating it, presenting it, asking for some feedback from your friends and kind of presenting to them, you kind of just acquire that confidence through time. So I would say, if you are more of a shy person and an introvert like me, just push yourself a bit. Maybe start with your friends, maybe start with your family, but just speak about your work. Just kind of practice and practice and practice, and maybe that could help. Because I feel like, again, probably another drawback could be some negative feedback or criticism. And it's hard to kind of get negative comments about your work, because that's your little baby of labor, and you created it from scratch, and it's kind of hard when someone judges it. But as long as it is valid criticism, just take it, accept it, rethink it, and apply it to your own work if it's coming from a professional designer. But if you see that there's like some comments that are quite emotional and doesn't really make sense and aren't really valid, just try and ignore those and avoid that. So maybe just kind of trusting yourself, but being open to some feedback, which is not going to be always positive, because we don't know everything, right? And that's okay.
Of course. Amazing. And last but not least, talk with us. You wanted to go live. Feel free to unmute yourself, talk with us.
Of course. Thank you, God. Thank you, Goda, so much for, you just nailed this presentation, this guest lecture. So my question for you would be, as an ex-student now and now a young professional, how do you prioritize tasks and deal with stress when you almost miss the deadlines?
Now I don't have not really the pleasure. Now, luckily, I can't miss the deadlines because I am working in the studio. I don't work from home, so that really helps a lot, because I'm just working amongst other designers, and I am kind of encouraged to work a full 8-hour day. Because I feel like I had a lot of problems when I was studying from home and working from home, and I lost my routine and I wasn't as productive. And there was quite a lot of stress. And I feel like with stress, there's so many tools nowadays that you can use. And it's, for me personally, meditation, some doing some sports helps, cooking as well. Just maybe allowing myself to relax and not punishing myself for that. But then being, creating an agreement with myself that I will sit down and work and will try to work efficiently. I remember I got so bad at my efficiency that I started monitoring my time when I was working. And I just downloaded a plugin that, like a little clock on my computer. And whenever I would start working, doing actual work, I would start the timer. And whenever I would decide to do a little break, to go to the toilet, to make myself another cup of tea, I would stop the clock. And after the whole day, I was saying, oh, I did a great job. I was sitting at my desk for the whole day. I was working hard. And then I would see that I literally worked for an hour and a half. That's when you understand that you need to work on your efficiency and that you're procrastinating somewhere and that there's a gap somewhere and you need to work on it. But I feel like with everything, you need to identify it first and then kind of try an individual way how you work through it. But at the end of the day, again, I feel like we get a lot of pressure to succeed, to land a job straight away after uni, to get into the best studios and agencies straight away. But don't forget, we're so young. It's only the beginning of our career. It's easy for me to say, sitting in my comfortable, good studio chair at the moment. But this thing that my director told me, that they're not expecting me to know how to do everything, it really helped. And I feel like someone needed to tell me that when I was a student, because I thought I need to come into the studio knowing everything. And for graphic designers, it feels like we need to know how to do 3D modeling, how to do motion graphics, how to do coding, how to do, all of those bits. And you might go crazy with all of that pace, but actually you don't. Just focus on the ideas. And I feel like it's probably very similar to other disciplines of design. Just focus on ideas and input work, because by just designing, the actual design will get better. And feedback, again, accept feedback and ask for it. It's quite an extensive answer, but hopefully I answered it.
That was amazing, Goda, and really nice points of advice to finish on as well. So thank you, Goda. It's a fantastic talk and great Q&A session as well. Thanks for your time, the talk, the insights, your tips and advices as well. And all of the participants, Goda's details were sent to you ahead of the talk, so definitely feel free to connect and browse the website as well. Mehmet's kindly shared it in the chat, and it's all on across Goda's slides as well. And to conclude, thank you, Goda, for taking out your time and joining us tonight. It was very informative. And thanks to all of the participants and attendees as well. For all students, staff, alumni, we really look forward to seeing you all again next week as well. So keep an eye out on your emails for the details of the speaker and the links to the talk. Until next time, until next week, stay well, stay safe, and thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Goda.
Thank you.